Afternoon or evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us today, October 6th, 2024, one day before the one-year anniversary of the horrific attack by Hamas into Israel that resulted in over 1,200 deaths and the taking of 251 hostages into Gaza. Sadly, 97 still remain, many of whom are thought to be dead. We are all still trying to come to terms with the barbaric evil that happened 366 days ago. The celebration of Rosh Hashanah for the year 5785 was just completed, and we Jews are now in our 10 days of repentance, a period of intense introspection and self-evaluation that will end on Yom Kippur. Today, we will memorialize those who were killed and pray for the welfare of those who still be held captive and their families. As well, we will pray for those in Israel and Jews anywhere and everywhere in this world who are alive and still living with the horror of October 7th, 2023. The strength of the Jewish people will forever remain as we continue to survive every tragedy that has befallen us. With that, I would like to recite the following three blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Blessed art thou, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, for granting us life, for sustaining us, and for helping us to reach this day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, matir asurim. Blessed are you, Adonai, King of the universe, who frees the captive. And the following prayer for peace. Oseh shalom bimromov, hu yaseh shalom, alenu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates peace in the heavens bring peace to us all and all of Israel. Amen. And now let me please introduce Alpha Omega International President-elect Eldad Helft, who will conduct the following memorial service.
Thank you, Merv. A year has passed since the devastating massacre in south of Israel, a terrific act of terror that claimed the life of more than 14,000 Israeli, 100 murdered simply because they were Jew. On October 7, children, women, and men fell victim to brutality. This tragic day sent shockwaves through our world, both in Israel and across the global Jewish community, like a tsunami that forever changed the landscape of our life. Today, Alpha Omega has chosen to mark this anniversary by highlighting a unique perspective, commemorating the heroism and sacrifice of the Israeli dental community. In the darkness of that day and the challenging months that follow, dentists across Israel demonstrate extraordinary courage and dedication. Many dentists joined the emergency response team, providing critical medical assistance during and after the attack. Dental professionals play a crucial role in the painful but necessary task of identification of the victims. Others served in reserve duty, answering the call to defend their homeland. The dental community opened their chair, the clinic, and their hearts, providing care and support for displaced family. We gather to remember the victim and honor the survivors. We also recognize those healthcare professionals who stepped forward in the national dark hours. Moment. Technical problem. Just 1 second, please. יזכור עם ישראל את בניו ובנותיו הנאמנים והאמיצים, חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל, וכל לוחמי המחתרות וחטיבות הלוחמים במערכות העם, ואנשי קהילת המודיעין, הביטחון, המשטרה ושירות בתי הסוהר, אשר חירפו נפשם במלחמה על תקומת ישראל, וכל מי שנרצחו בארץ ומחוצה לה בידי מרצחים מארגוני הטרור. יזכור ישראל ויתברך בזרעו ויאבל על זיו העלומים, וחמדת הגבורה וקדושת הרצון ומסירות הנפש של הנספים במערכה כבדה. יהי חללי מערכות ישראל עטורי הניצחון חתומים בלב ישראל לדור דור.
May the people of Israel remember its sons and daughters, the faithful and courageous soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces, and all fighters of the underground movements and combat units in the people's struggles, and members of the intelligence community, security services, police, and prison service who risked their lives in the war for Israel's revival, and all those who were murdered in Israel and abroad by assassins from terrorist organizations. May Israel remember and be blessed by its seed and mourn the radiance of youth, the grandeur of heroism, the dedication of will, and devotion of those who fell in the intense battle. May the fallen of Israel's battles, crowned with victory, be sealed in the hearts of Israel for generation after generation.
You, Marvin, I think we're just having a little trouble with the presentation.
You don't have the presentation?
It's showing dark on my end. Is
Where do you
panelists
see it?
now it's back. Okay, now we're back.
Okay. You can see
And
it
could
now?
you possibly make it a little bit larger, Eldad?
Now
now
it's
when-
okay?
Now it went dark. Press it again. It might just be actually in the design of your presentation.
Yeah, now you can see.
No, it might be something with the screen sharing.
Can you hear?
Yes, that we can hear.
הולך אני כעת במשעול ההווה, כילד ההולך לו לאיבוד, כפות ידיים מושטות מבקשות את העזרה, להמשיך איתך את המסע. ובצדדים הפרחים כאילו איבדו את זהותם, מחפשים עוד קרן אור שתעזור, עוד לגימה קטנה של מים ממעייני החוכמה, תביא להם את התקווה. הרים ראשי, אשא עיניי אל ההרים במרחקים, וקולי יישמע כזעקה, כתפילת האדם, וליבי יקרא, מאין יבוא עזרי. עובר אני כעת בנופים חדשים, הצעדים הם נעשים כה איטיים, מה יש שם שאין פה? שאל אותי עובר, מה בלב אתה שומר? קשיש העיר כשעל גבו מונח כל עברו, מביט סביב ומחפש את עולמו, כשההווה כל כך קשה לא אומר דבר, ארים ראשי אל המחר. ארים ראשי, אשא עיניי אל ההרים במרחקים, קולי יישמע כזעקה, כתפילת האדם, וליבי יקרא, מאין יבוא עזרי.
We light a candle for those who murdered in the last year. I would like to present our speaker for today, Dr. Vladi Dvoyris. Vladi was the former agent in Israel. A year ago, Vladi joined the team of dentists who helped identify the victims. At my request, Vladi agreed to share with us some of his experience at that time. Vladi, please.
Thank you, Eldad, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session today. So I don't have slides, so this would be a talk. And I will start by answering some questions I keep being asked. And then, of course, if you have any additional questions, you're welcome to ask them as well. As a short introduction, my name is Vladi Dvoyris. I'm a dentist for the last 15 years. I'm 41 years old. I'm married to Mirav, who's also a doctor, but in musicology. And we have two sons, Itamar and Amitai. Some of you who are friends with me on Facebook might have seen them. And I wanted to tell you about the Death Star. This is what I call this place, which I returned from. So I wasn't in Gaza. I wasn't even near the border. I didn't fire a single shot during this entire war. At night, every night, or almost every night, I went home. But I've seen more dead people than most soldiers have, and far more than the average person will see in their entire lifetime. So during the first 11 weeks of the war, 2 months and a half, I was identifying the dead at the Shura base. At Shura, there's a large military morgue. And during those days, it really transformed, in my mind, into the Death Star. So the first question people ask usually is, how do you get there and what exactly did you do? On the morning of October 8th, I woke up at 5 a.m. without any particular reason. And I saw a missed phone call. Someone tried to reach me at 1:30 a.m., a doctor whom I knew from the military. And when someone you know calls you in the middle of the night, it's usually a sign that something really bad happened. So I called her back at 5 a.m. and she answered. And then she immediately said, trucks full of bodies are arriving here and we need good people. And right after, she also said, oh, but only if you think you can handle it. But while she was saying that, I was already processing in my mind what she just said and thinking how exactly I should handle it. So it wasn't a question of if. And I could hear her voice. I could even imagine her face as she talked to me. And I understood that this was the place where I could be most useful at that moment. And so it was my duty to go there. So I said, I'm coming. Where should I come exactly? I packed a bag with 2 sandwiches and an apple. I didn't know how much time it will be until I'm back home. And I drove there. So this morgue at Shura, which I've seen that morning for the first time, it was built a few years ago, and it was actually designed to handle a mass casualty event should it happen. However, the number of bodies that we received in the days after October 7th was about 10 times what this place was prepared to take in and deal with. And in the first weeks, to cope with this huge massacre, literally hundreds of people worked there, from the military rabbinate who were responsible for handling the bodies, military doctors and dentists from the casualty identification unit, where I was also assigned, and volunteer dentists from the criminal identification unit of the police who worked in the same building and were responsible for identifying the civilian casualties. And as a dentist, as the dentists of you here probably understand, my job was to identify the dead by their teeth. And for the non-dental part of the audience, I would say the teeth are a convenient and quick way to identify people because they create a unique pattern that differs from person to person. And it might be the position of the teeth, twisted roots, special crowns, signs of past treatments such as fillings, root canals, crowns, implants, braces. All these allow us to compare the body on the table with x-rays of a missing individual and determine with high probability that this is the same person or not, because sometimes the x-rays are from 15 years ago and maybe many things in the mouth have changed since then. So that's the part when you need to do detective work and think like Sherlock Holmes, deducting. If this tooth was already half destroyed years ago and today there's an implant at the same place, there's a logical sequence of events. But of course, if someone had a damaged tooth, but now within the mouth of the body, it's completely healthy, then it's not the same person. And I also noticed that every dentist would see different details. Orthodontists would focus on specific shapes of retainers. Endodontists would notice sudden disappearance of root canals on an x-ray, and surgeons would look at the septa of the maxillary sinus, and you could go on. But sometimes there were people with such perfect mouths that one couldn't really rely on teeth as means of identification, because everything was so straight and beautiful that there aren't enough unique features to latch onto. And sometimes it also happened that there were no teeth left anymore. The mouth was crushed or the entire head was missing. So in addition to teeth were identified by fingerprints and DNA samples. Among all these, dental identification is the fastest, but for it to be possible, we must know who are we comparing to. Sometimes they have an ID or a dog tag we can look at, and it can be a clue, definitely not a thing to rely on for identification because they could have picked up the ID of their friend. And sometimes we had to look at a series of x-rays of various people to know if we can match one of them to whoever is lying on the table right now. And we were divided there into teams of 3 dentists, a doctor, and a photographer. And together we worked, it felt like an assembly line in a factory. We tried to identify as many of the deceased, killed as quickly as possible, and release them for burial. This was the main goal. So one body comes in, we check it from all the angles, we identify, we photograph, we sign the report, close, take it out, bring in the next one. And this is the way we kept going in 12-hour shifts in the first days, then 8-hour shifts, round the clock, until we finished with everyone who could have been identified easily or relatively easily, and then we were left with the mysteries, with all those people who were most severely mutilated, to the point that they could no longer be identified by conventional means. And sometimes all that was left was so small that it required a forensic expert to determine that there's no chance this guy or this girl could stay alive without this small part that we're currently holding. And then the ground operation began after a few weeks, and we started receiving fallen soldiers from the battlefield, also for identification. And this was different and perhaps even harder, because after October 7th, we already had all the 1,200 dead as a fact, and we had to deal with this fact. And here we were dealing with soldiers who may have been standing on their feet just hours ago. And in addition to them, we received bodies of hostages and bodies from Gaza that were suspected to be hostages, and we identified them to the best of our ability so that the family could finally bury them. And of course, there were difficult moments. You would often look someone in the eyes and see immediately that these eyes have seen a lot of cruelty and a lot of evil recently. And then they'd look you in the eyes and see the same. And all that's left to do in that moment is just to hug and stick together. So I stayed at Shura even after the pressure eased a bit and they offered some people to be discharged, because I understood that I was still needed and I was still useful. And as long as I could bear it, it was my duty to do that. So this is what I did for 11 weeks until I was discharged towards the end of December. And the second question I get a lot is, how do you do that? And for this, I should tell you that our brains are incredible and we have an amazing ability to cope with challenging situations as they happen through detachment. And detachment, in normal life, detachment is also normal. It's like when you're driving a car. If you're an experienced driver, a part of your brains knows how to drive and drives you, and then you keep talking, you keep listening to music, and you don't necessarily remember every detail of the road. So this is a normal situation. You have two parts of your brain. They operate parallel to each other without interfering. And you don't have to remember every detail of all the teeth you have seen in your lifetime. But Shura was not a normal situation because, like most of the doctors there, I had never encountered anything like this before. And the usual detachment had to kick into overdrive, and it turned into full-scale dissociation. So I was there physically, meaning that my eyes were watching, my hands were working, my mouth was talking, but I wasn't really there emotionally. To perform my job, I had to not be there fully. And in fact, there are moments now when I feel more there than what I did when I was actually there. So because at that time, back then, there was no emotional processing. During the military service, in the beginning of the war, I was interviewed several times by some media outlets, mainly in Russian. And when I look back at those interviews, some of them were recorded, I see someone who looks like me, sitting there, speaking very professionally, very coldly, almost like a machine, focused on the technical side of things. And even when they asked me to talk about the emotional aspect, I tried to avoid it as much as I could. And one result of this is that today, I barely remember the names of the people I identified. There were dozens, maybe 100, who passed through my hands. And I say barely because a few did manage to penetrate through the walls that I built. But when I say that they passed through my hands, I now realize that they really did pass through me. And even though I don't remember them by name, they did leave a mark. So, and then people keep asking, how? How did you survive emotionally, all that? And the answer is, well, as I said, you build defense walls as thick as you can, but even the strongest walls, eventually they break down. And sometimes it happens very quickly, maybe even with the first or the second body you encounter. before even you had the chance to build the wall. And I remember on my very first day at Shura, I had to examine the body of a young soldier, a 19-year-old kid. And his body was what we call well preserved. He died of a single bullet. And he was lying there on the table. We addressed him, and I looked at his face, and I caught myself thinking that he reminded me of my son. And then I quickly snapped out of it because I realized that if I started seeing my own kids in that soldiers, I wouldn't be able to handle it. And from that moment on, I never made this mistake again. But that specific kid, that particular soldier, barely 19, he's etched in my memory. And I know he broke through my defenses because I remember his name, and I'll probably remember it for many years to come. And I saw the same thing happening to others too. And you might think it would happen with the extreme cases, but it turns out that when you get someone who has been hit by an RPG or been exhumed from a grave after a month, or a company of soldiers that arrives in dozens of bags, and you have to try to piece them together, where it's easier actually to forget for a moment that these are human beings. And our defenses, they crack mostly with the bodies that were preserved, those who remained relatively intact. And it was easy to look at their faces, into their eyes that sometimes were still open. And for me, it was especially hard to see open eyes, because even though the rational part of me knew that the person was dead, the gaze staring at me was very unsettling. And I always tried to close their eyes or cover them to keep focusing on the mouth and on my work. And Israel is a small country, and sometimes people, fortunately not me, saw someone on the table that they might have known in some way. And those were very tough moments for everyone present in the room. But each of us understood that we have a mission to carry out, and even though this mission pushed us to take a deep breath and keep going, we couldn't ignore everything we saw or the smell that filled this place. So we didn't ignore it. We just set it aside, and we said there would be time to process it later. The people from the rabbinate saw this work as a mitzvah, as a religious duty. I'm completely not religious, so for me, I've seen it as a professional obligation. And I thought, in the process, I thought, well, I'd be okay. I can bear with this. I can cope. But today I understand that even back then, I could have already seen the signs and symptoms. So, because even back then, after a couple of weeks, I became more impatient, more short-tempered. And even when I was discharged and returned to my affairs and projected business as usual as much as I could, and I went to business trips, and then about 2 months later, in March, it suddenly hit me. So thoughts about the place came back, about certain situations there, about specific cases I had handled, and which turns out are very hard to forget. And they keep coming back. They kept back then, and they stood before my eyes, whether I wanted them or not. And I couldn't chase them away. And it could come at any moment when I was treating patient, driving, reading a book, taking a shower. In these moments, a very vivid image of one casualty or another I had encountered would rise before me. And the trigger for this could have been something I didn't even really notice. But also, every time I opened the news and heard about another soldier killed, an image of the exact treatment room in Shura would immediately come up, along with all the possible situations I had seen there. And I realized I knew by heart everything they're doing there now, from start to finish, the entire process, and I cannot let go of these images or thoughts. And well, for some people, such things that I describe produce anxiety or even panic. But for me, they created deep sadness. maybe even despair. And so in the meanwhile, I held myself together as much as I could. I had to continue working. I didn't collapse, but I was depressed. I was unpleasant. I was irritable. And this was my way, just push people away from me. And at first I thought that maybe I was depressed because of the general situation and the ongoing war and the political situation. And after all, you cannot look at what happened here and not be depressed. But then I understood that it's something more than a depression, and I realized I need professional help, and I went for psychotherapy. And after a few months in therapy, when we understood what was really going on there, I also received an official diagnosis of PTSD. So now I'm still in therapy, I'm taking medication, and although these images still come to visit, at least I can move on. I'm more tired, I'm working slower, and my attention is scattered. I forget simple everyday things. And well, I'm 41, I've been through some tough times in my life, but I don't remember myself ever feeling like this before. And so the last question I'd like to address before moving on to maybe something you would like to ask is, why do you go there? Well, and people ask that. You could have chosen to do something else instead, and they're right. And no one ordered me to go there. They gently asked. I could have done other things. I was summoned at the same time to the home front command, or I could have just been a dentist in the clinic. But I don't think that this would have felt right for me. In the oath we took at the beginning of our career, we swore to help people, to heal the sick, to alleviate pain, to improve quality of life. So it's true that I can no longer help the dead, but I can help their families, I can help their friends, I can help their parents. I can help by providing them with some certainty and closure. I can help by determining that their son or daughter is no longer among the living, and that the remains brought for burial, even very little ones, truly belong to them, so that the family would have a grave to cry on. And then they would be able to mourn, and mourning is a natural process that ultimately brings healing. So the families never meet us at any stage, but I would like them to know that we did this for them, for the people who remained alive, so that they can continue with their lives and not remain suspended in endless waiting. And you know, the religious approach says that those who died in God's name are holy and we must honor them in their death. I'm not a believer, as I said before, and I think I'm there to ultimately provide a beginning of healing for the families. But there was one thing I learned from the religious is that there is such a thing as soul sacrifice. In Hebrew, it's mesirut nefesh. There are those who sacrifice themselves physically when they run into battle before everyone else and may be killed. And there are others who sacrifice themselves spiritually so that others can heal. And I realized that probably this is what I was doing there. Essentially, I left a piece of my soul in Shura so that others could heal. And this was probably the most meaningful thing I've done in my dental career. And I understood that even if I had known in advance about everything I would see, and that I would eventually come out of there with PTSD, despite the fact that I could have simply not gone there and avoided it. Nevertheless, if they were to call me now from that same place and say, we need you, come over, well, I would put the same 2 sandwiches and the same apple in my bag again, get in the car and drive there, and I would do exactly the same thing. So if you have any questions, I can already see a question from Marvin. Marvin asks, how was your family affected by your service? And thank you very much. Thank you, Marvin. So my family, well, my family, they were relatively lucky because they got to see me every day or almost every day. So I was present at home when I wasn't on shift. However, they received a very different version of me, a version that prefers to be alone and doesn't want to be bothered. I think my wife, Mirav, was very supportive of me, and she understood perfectly what I was doing there. So yeah, it went well. The little one, Amitai, he was almost 2 years old back then, so we didn't tell him, of course, what daddy does. But Itamar, who was already 9, well, he asked, "What am I doing in the military?" And I told him in very general terms, and he understood. And he understood also why is it important. So Lori, okay, I'm going to read the questions. Lori Gordon, thank you so much for sharing your experience about doing this important work. Is there a way we can support this work? Well, as a matter of fact, I'm not sure because since October 7th last year, we were quite overwhelmed with equipment and with everything you could have imagined. I do believe the only thing that the military identification unit is missing these days is a CT machine. Other than that, and that's quite expensive. And I don't even know if they would be able to accept it. But other than that, I think they should have everything. And of course, you should support us mentally for what we do. Jason Golnick asks, first of all, thank you for your work, dedication, and strength. Thank you, Jason. It takes a lot of mental, psychological effort to perform the job you were asked to do. Difficulty in assessing and identifying those victims is tough enough, but knowing that the conflict continues each and every hour and day, did it make your job more challenging? Well, when it was back then, and the war was still ongoing for 2 months, two months and a half, the time aspect was not yet something to be worried about. Of course, now after a year, I think of it completely differently, and it makes my everyday coping with this more challenging, because really I wanted to wait with processing until after the war ends, but I've seen that it wouldn't end anytime soon, so I just started processing the entire thing, and well, the result is that I'm sitting here and speaking to you. I believe that my friends and colleagues who are still in reserves, and some of them are in reserves for the last year without being discharged, I might think that it makes the job more challenging for them, because they had to reinvent the way they work and they spend time with their families throughout this entire year. Gary Batman asked, did you use any dental identification comparison software to assist your group in the process? Interpol Plus Data, WINIT. Okay, so the police use Plus Data. The military, on October 7th, we only had a very good database of panoramic images of almost all the soldiers drafted in the last 20-something years. So this was a good place to start with, but we needed to know the ID of the person we were looking for. So then I'm involved with an AI company called Diagnocat, and we offered our help back then. I was right on the spot, so it was easy for me to offer help. And the military didn't want to let this data out to a civilian company, so instead they asked for some advice, which I gave. And after this, they started building their own AI software that's already operational. And currently, it's operational to the level that it had already tagged all these panoramic images of soldiers who are either in service or were in service, and tagged the dental findings in these images. And so now, if you have someone who's completely anonymous and you don't have a clue who this might be, you can look at their teeth and type in the findings into a computer and then run search. And within a couple of moments, really very fast, you will have matching panoramic images, of course, by level of certainty, and you might find something there. So on October 7th, we had not. Now there is something.
Vladi, excuse me for
Vladi.
disturbing.
Yeah,
I will talk about it if we have time in the end, because this is the software that
Perfect.
we in Tel Aviv helped to develop. It was our
Perfect.
students that worked on it.
Vladi,
okay,
last
great.
question, because we have to finish in a few
Yeah.
minutes.
Last question. Mark Rothman also asked, what can we do to help on our end? I think I answered that one. Thank you, Mark. Were you or other dentists trained in forensic dentistry or used common sense to ID bodies? We weren't, at least the military, we were not trained at all, especially not those who came into reserves. This was the first time, and we practically trained on the job. So we used our dental knowledge, we used common sense, and I don't know if glad is the right word, but I'm glad that I have been there with a bunch of great and very experienced colleagues, some of whom were actually my former classmates, and everyone brought his own experience, and we combined it, and I think we got some good results in the end. Again, were you trained for this? Nope, no, I wasn't. And so Eldad asked me to wrap it up, so I am wrapping it up. And thank you, everyone. I'm reading your questions now, all of them. And thank you so much for your support. And
Thank you, Vlad.
I hope to meet you again in nicer circumstances.
Yeah, thank you, Vladi. I cannot imagine what people pass in that camp, but I hope that we will be able to help in the future.
Thank you,
In every
Eldad.
dark
Thank you for inviting me.
In every dark period of history, there is always a glimmer of light in the end of the tunnel, offering hope and guidance. This reminds us, for every challenge we face, there exists a solution waiting to be discovered. It is a solid belief that sustained Alpha Omega throughout its history. And even today, after more than a century since its founding, Alpha Omega stands as a beacon of hope and progress, its importance is relevant, unrelieved by the passing of time. Our dental community, bonded together by the shared commitment to excellence and compassion, finds itself in a unique position to support Israel during this trying time. We have always prided ourselves in our ability to adapt and respond to the needs of our nation, and recent Christ and only proved. In the immediate aftermath of the tragic events of October 7, we recognize the urgent need of the medical support. Without moment of hesitation, our committee mobilized its resource and network. In demonstrating in our commitment to saving life, we swift urgent for a donation of 2 full-equipped ambulances to the Magen David Adom, the Israeli National Emergency Service. However, our effort did not stop there. Recognize the displacement of family from their home would create ongoing healthcare challenges without to address the dental care needs for those population. With a strategy partnership with Natan Foundation, we established 2 state-of-the-art mobile dental clinics. Those were equipped with the latest dental technology and staffed by dedicated professionals from our community, have been deployed to the Dead Sea and to Eilat region. Here, they provide essential primary dental care to those who have been displaced, ensuring that in every time of crisis, basic health needs are not being neglected. The spirit of Alpha Omega continue to drive our action, even in the situation involved. Today, as a new need arises, we stand ready to meet them. In collaboration with Professor Avi Zini and Professor Ohel Sarig, we launched an initiative to support faculty members and students who have shown extraordinary courage. Many of those individuals risked their life to defend our homeland, while others engaged to a critical task of victim identification. We recognize the profound impact of those experiences can have on the individual's personal and professional life. To address this, we are developing a comprehensive program aimed to provide those brave individuals with the tool and support they need to return to their normal life. Those programs include psychological support, professional development opportunity, and financial assistance wherever needed. Our goal is to ensure that no member of our AO academic dental community left behind as we navigate through this challenging time together. As we look to the future, Alpha Omega remains committed to adapting our support to meet the evolving needs of our community and our nation. We stand ready to face whatever challenge may come, secure the knowledge that together we have the strength and the experience to overcome any obstacle. In doing so, we are not only honoring our rich history, but also pave the way for a brighter future for all of us. I would like to introduce Professor Avi Zini, Dean of the Faculty of Dental Medicine at Hadassah, Jerusalem, who navigating between war, studies, and significant commitment support. Despite all the difficulty, Avi has led the faculty through this challenging period and continue to do so. Avi, please.
Thank you, Eldad. Good morning, everyone, and good evening for us. I'm trying to share. Can you see what I'm sharing right now?
No, yeah, now yes.
Yeah, and when it is, let me see if and now? Is it in the bigger? Okay, perfect.
No, now it is.
Now it's bigger.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. So unlike our last meeting with the AO, I won't talk about the faculty and the development of our school. I will talk about the last year because this is the most important thing and the most appropriate issue due to this event. So can you see this in the next slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Oops.
Avi, no sound.
So this is how it's all happened and started on October 7th. Our lives were changed. We mourn the loss of over 1,400 lives. 251 actually were kidnapped to Gaza. Actually, I lost my nephew and his spouse. As Vladi told you, some of the bodies were without their heads, and he was without his head, and the identification was very hard to identify him. It took about 7 days, something like that, and after that buried him. But you know, in such a case like that, you never know if he's considered as a kidnap because he doesn't have his head, or is just his head was somewhere around the place that he was found. We don't know the answer until today. About the dental school during the war, since October 7th, actually, the school has been actively involved in various ways in Israel challenges. I have 3 examples of these challenges. One is more than 35% of our students were drafted to reserve service, many of them in their critical final years of studies, the clinical years. Faculty members have also been called up for service, and this is also impact our school. And we have challenging time between population within Israel, within the university, and of course within the school. We have the Jewish students and the Arab students that were studying together, and because the academic year was postponed, we had about 2 months to handle this situation between populations. We had a lot of talks with these 2 groups, because the Arabs thought that the Jewish students are blaming them for everything. The Jewish students were feeling that maybe the Arab students are supporting it. Some of them unfriends them in Facebook and things like that they won't be able to see if they are supported the Hamas actions. And these tenses with a lot of meetings with each group and together decrease the tension between these populations. The school and its students were engaged in during the first 2 months in voluntary initiative to support the community. We provide first aid free of charge to the evacuees and the IDF soldiers in Jerusalem. We provide dental treatment in evacuation centers with mobile equipment and a mobile dental clinic. We arrived to the Dead Sea, to the hotels there, to Eilat, to the hotels there with mobile dental clinic, and we treat this population of the evacuees. And we also establish emergency team to assist in handling incident with many casualties if necessary in the future. About the forensic unit, you heard about it a lot from Vladi, but from our school, we had 32 faculty members that were contributing to the identification process, as some of casualties were so severely affected that even DNA identification is challenging. And here you can see Dr. Essie Sharon on your right, that was the head of the unit. And on your left, you can see all the bodies, the place, and all the things that we already heard. On November 5th, the Hebrew University announced on the establishment of a fund aimed at supporting students serving residents of the Gaza envelope affected by the terrorist attack and evacuees. It was called We Are One, and within just 3 weeks, the university has successfully raised 15 million shekels for this critical cause. In December 31st, the Hebrew University opens the academic year with 2 shortened semesters, a total of 22 weeks. For us, it was too small, too short. So we decided to, with the rector's approval, to open it a few days before with 2 shortened semesters, a total of 26.5 weeks. Clinical education will be added during the summer as needed, and we did added these weeks that were so crucial for the students. About the teaching program, the school administration and faculty members have been collaborating to revise the curriculum for a shorter semester because we need to adjust the curriculum. We establish a support system for students who were and still are these days in reserve, ensuring they can catch up on the studies they may have missed. And the school has been supported students and faculty in reserve by many things. For example, a personal meeting with the dean in the first day they came from their service. We assign specific mentor that every mentor has only, mentor is one faculty member that had only one faculty member to be focused on. Top students assist with private lessons that we paid. Tutors assigned to assist personally to students with difficulties. And we added a Miluim clinic that gave specific clinic hours for the students that return from service. And we have 2 challenges that I wanted to share with you that maybe Alpha Omega can help us. First is to support for the reserve student clinic, the Miluim clinic. Since October 7th, as I said, many students of our school have been called to reserve service in the IDF with up to 35% of our students affected at its peak. And now we are in the beginning of another peak because of the war in Lebanon. To address this challenge, our school has taken a significant step by establishing afternoon clinic hours at the Seligman Student Clinic, specifically for students in reserve services, and our faculty member were volunteering, securing faculty and volunteering afternoon and at night to teach those students and to bring patients and to make as much as treatment that they can in these hours. So securing faculty members to volunteer during afternoon hours has proven increasingly difficult. And this is how Alpha Omega can help, as many also manage private practice. Given the ongoing situation in Israel, we anticipate that our students will continue to be called to reserve duty, as we can see in these days, and will require our assistance in the coming academic year. With financial assistance, we can continue operating the reserve student clinic in a manner that meets the needs of the students without over-relying on the voluntary efforts of our faculty. And you can see in the green part of the screen what we learned from this year. In addition, we have another challenge about students and even as faculty members that are with PTSD. And we need to support these students due to their syndrome. Our dental school students, including reservist spouses of reservists and students from displaced families, have been deeply affected by the Iron Swords War. It is crucial to provide trauma-focused psychological support since they are facing immense emotional challenges, and specialized therapy can be a lifeline. So how can Alpha Omega help? Your donation will directly enable the subsidizing of treatment. We found out that about $2,000 for 30 meetings for each student will be sufficient, and the contribution will cover full series of sessions with psychologists trained to address the unique pressure faced by dental students. With your support, we can help them heal and continue their educational journey. This is our two challenges that we need right now. And if Alpha Omega can help us with that, we'll be blessed. I want to bless you for Shana Tova and a sweet new year. And we hope that this year will be much better than the previous year. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. And I want to introduce Professor Rocheli Sarig, head of the School of Dental Medicine at the Tel Aviv University. Rocheli entered the role shortly before October 7 and managed to lead the faculty during this complex time. For those who don't know, adding to all difficulty was the fact that Rocheli has 5 kids at home and her husband was on duty in Gaza for most of the time. So Rocheli, I don't know how you managed to do it and still smiling. So please.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, or good evening, depends where you are. And I'm happy to be here with you. I would like the circumstances to be happier, of course. And I want to thank Avi for presenting our needs in such a clear way. As you know, both of the dental school, we have only 2 dental schools here in Israel. So we both have the role of leading the dental profession and the importance of dental education and the dentist who supports the people during war. So obviously we're dealing with similar challenges. I would like to share with you really briefly some of the things we had gone through. Tell me if you see the presentation. Do you see it on full screen?
Yes. No.
Not full screen?
Yeah, full screen.
Full screen? Okay, yes. So it's going to be very short, don't worry. So indeed, I entered my position at the 1st of October, and then the war started at the 7th of October. So the first thing we did with your generous help, and we really appreciate your support and help of the Alpha Omega members who helped us to collect supplies, hexacapone, medications to the soldiers in the front lines. Many of our students and staff were drafted to the army, and there were shortage in supply. And what we did really from the first day of the war is collecting bandages, medications, hexacapone that we took from our own clinics and from the dental school. And by that, we were able to help the front units. And you can see here, these are our staff member. Can you hear?
Of the School
Yes.
of Dentistry at Tel Aviv University. Thanks to your contribution, we are here, staff and students of the School of Dentistry, with medical supplies that will help us in upcoming days. Thank you very much.
So indeed, students and staff from the front lines, from Gaza, called me. I was just a week in my position and said, we don't have enough medications. We don't have bandages. Can you please help us? So we really collected a lot of supplies, and with your generous help, we purchased some of the supplies, and we're still helping them whenever they need.
We want to thank.
So the second thing that we did is really to open the emergency dental clinics for refugees and military forces. And again, with your generous support, we were able to provide treatment free of charge to those who were evacuated from their homes. They were refugees. I don't know if you can imagine this. They were just kicked out of their houses without anything, without having aligners, with a crown that broke, teeth that broke. They had nowhere to go. So in our clinics, they could get the help free of charge, and they still do. They still come to us. Now we have a connection with the Prime Minister office, with the hostages department, to help and support the families of hostages, providing them with dental care. This is something they need. And, you know, people think about the most common things that are needed, but we as dentists have such a unique position to support and help the population, and I'm proud that we're able to be in such a position to assist. So this is our student, and this is one of the most common I think images that you will see when you come to the dental school, because again, like in the Jerusalem, about 30% of our students were drafted to the army, and there still are serving in the army. So this is how it looks like. They're coming from the battlefield directly into treating patients. And I think that this image really represents how our reality seems those days. And asking about, Vladi described it so really touching and beautifully, and thank you, Vladi, for that. You were asking, are we teaching forensic dentistry? So to be honest, we're not teaching forensic dentistry, but in my lab, as I'm a dental anthropologist, it's a completely different subject, but we're dealing with forensic dentistry. And my research, my students' research for the last 5 years, her PhD thesis was about burned teeth. So for the last 5 years, we were working on burned teeth. We burn teeth in different temperature, different times, and we try to analyze and to see how much DNA is preserved and how it's affecting the teeth. And we didn't even imagine that our publications from the last, the last year will be so useful for the process of identification, as I myself took part in the identification in Shura camp. And what you're seeing here now, images that were not published, but these are actually the remains from the Nahal Oz station, Nahal Oz front lines, where the Tatzpitaniot, where the female soldiers were actually burned there. So 15 soldiers were burned there, and we were trying to separate their remains. And these are the remains. And what you see here in the lower image, this is the only remain that was left of one of the soldiers. So obviously, like Vladi described, this is very challenging and very, very difficult to go from one side to work and to children and to my children, and then go back to Shura camp and work with the identification units. Talking about the AI in identification, so exactly what Vladi mentioned. So the army approached us, and the reason was exactly like you described, that the data could not be transferred outside of the army. So together with the army, we developed a software, an AI software. And in order to do that, they had to train the AI device, the AI computers, and they had to use thousands of panoramic X-ray for training. And to do that, we took our students from the clinical years, and they were sitting day and night, going over thousands of panoramic X-rays to train the system. And I just got the call 2 weeks ago saying that now it's operational and it's very helpful, and we're working on helping the army to develop it furthermore. So indeed, we were all involved in all aspects of really helping, and you can see some of our staff. About 30 of our faculty and students were called for the army and the police to take part in the identification. And obviously it had a major effect also mentally and psychologically. And just to end up and sum up, this is my husband, and this is my son-in-law. And this image is from today. I just got it 2 hours ago. So I have images like that from all the last year, because my husband, he's 48 years old, and he's a tank commander. So for the last year, I think he was in the army, I guess something about 8 months altogether. So he came back home for Rosh Hashanah, but then he was called again. And my son-in-law, he's also a tank commander. So now they're sharing time, and I'm sitting at home with my daughter, waiting for them to come home safely. But indeed, this is, I think it's really representing how our lives look like in the last year, which is very difficult and not easy and very challenging. And I must thank you for your support, your ongoing support. It means a lot to us to feel your being a family to us, being our friends, that we know that we always can rely on you, and it really means a lot to us. So the School of Dental Medicine in Tel Aviv is celebrating the 50 years anniversary. Unfortunately, I must be honest, as this is my first year on the job. Maybe I'm making mistakes. I'm probably making a lot of mistakes, so don't tell anyone. So I wasn't sure, should I cancel this event? People will not come. People will not come, cannot come from far away. There are not flights. But we have decided to keep it going, to keep it running, because we really have to make sure that we have some normal routine. We need to make sure that we have normal life. This war is still going on. We're fighting in the north, we're fighting in the south. We're losing soldiers every day, unfortunately. And we have to make sure that we have our hope and we have our strength, and we will prevail, because we believe that our war is justified, and we believe in our way. And therefore, we know that Am Yisrael Chai, and we will not give up. And I know that this is a very sad day for everybody, but we must remember the hope. And this is right after Rosh Hashanah. We prayed for God to have a better year, and we truly believe that we will have a better year. And we will all together will have the chance to celebrate again and smile, and we will keep on smiling, because Am Yisrael Chai. So thank you so much for all of your support. And this is what I had to say. Briefly.
Thank you, Racheli. Once more, I told you as being a father for 2 kids in the army, I understand how you feel at home when your husband is so far away. So if you don't mind, stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I'll share mine.
Eldad, we cannot see your presentation or hear it.
Yeah, so I have some difficulties. Okay, we'll leave the technical problem for later. So all of you received the mail. I will ask you to read it carefully and send it to your chapter members. Our spirit, the spirit of Alpha Omega, dedicate our best, and we promise not to leave anyone alone without any support. Finally, I want to wish you all of a happy new year, a new year of prosperity, security, and health. And thank you for being with us today. Thank you.